So SYZ Guru 11 decided to model the coronavirus, and I am the fool that decided to 3D print it. However, before I could 3D print it, I needed to tune up my printer and specifically change the Z-stepper motor nacelle because I wanted to have layers that do not microstep, or at least avoid microstepping as much as possible, and have a motor that has a 0.9 degree step. And I used exactly the same method that I used before when I upgraded the other two, and these are the pinouts. And if you need more help, you can follow up on that video on a 0.9 degree stepper motor upgrade on the 2.3 Sapphire S. And the process was simple if you have the right tools, but if you don't, it's going to be a pain, and usually you need to have a 3D kit that takes more space than your actual 3D printer or 3D printer and filament. And I also increased or doubled the steps on the Z-axis step value, and here it goes. And the 3D printer or the Z lead screw needed some grease, and I added some silicone grease, and I thought that I am done and I should get to printing. Imported the model into Mesh Mixer to get it to orient it for me rather than me using my big brain and slowly adjusting it, but that wasn't enough. I still had to bring it in Cura and do some micro rotations for all the dendrites and the keychain hook to fit on the bed or touch the bed exactly, so I can avoid as much as possible the 3D printing of supports, because the removal of supports is not the funnest thing to do. So I slowly oriented the model and then loaded up into the printer and decided to 3D print it. But I ran into trouble. My bed wouldn't go down as required, and the nozzle was getting stuck into the bed because it was trying to get properly aligned. So I ran into this problem and I had to kind of retighten the bushing on the lead screw, as you can see there, and then I had to adjust the VREF, and none of that worked. The stepper motor would go into resonance and it wouldn't get out of resonance until it was too late. So therefore I started changing the Z-axis homing speed. I halved it from 10 to 5, and then the Z-axis mutation speed I lowered it from 5 to 3, and then the last one was the Z-axis travel max speed or the Z-axis max speed. I halved that by 10, basically from 20 to 10, and then I shrunk the model to 50% of the original scale, and I 3D printed a testing 3D print to see if the delicacies of the dendrites would work well, and they weren't that great, but it 3D printed and it found its way all the way into the garbage. And now I decided to 3D print it at 100% scale and get it working. To my surprise, it worked. It 3D printed, and it took quite a bit of time because I added some infill and I wanted to have the greatest quality ever. But it did not work towards my advantage because the supports were a painful process to remove, and the stringing because of my Bowden tube, which I've been avoiding to change and find the issue, because upgrading a 3D printer takes weeks, because every time you think you're ready to do it, you find some missing part or some missing link somewhere. And I slowly got to removing the 3D print off the bed. I removed some of the supports on the bed to be able to kind of hammer the wedge underneath it and remove it completely, and then kind of fine-tune the support removal. And the support removal took hours. I mean, hours and hours and hours, because it's very delicate. And I still managed to break a few dendrites. I think I broke like 3, and then I had to glue them back with the heat gun, and I removed the strings with the heat gun. And then I decided that I liked the sphere better than the whole coronavirus. Removed the dendrites in Mesh Mixer, and then I 3D printed it again, and it looks kind of shiny and new. But this is the original print, and you can see at the top where the supports were. I kind of heated it because it was kind of rough, so I wanted to smooth it out, but the PLA lost its shiny properties and it became this yellowish thing. This is a very difficult model. I like this picture and I like the reflection. It's like one of those traffic signs, which is kind of cool. But this was another problem that I discovered early after that. The Bowden tube or the Titan extruder cannot hold the Foster fitting properly because there's no threads, so I decided to upgrade the 3D printer from a Bowden style extruder to a direct style extruder, and look at that shininess there, and this is what I ended up with. But for this I had to modify 3 models from Thingiverse, and I kind of hacked them together to suit my needs because they're all designed for specific parts and none of them were designed for whatever the 3D printer comes with. They were all designed for 50, 15 fans and all this jazz. And in this process I managed to screw up my board because the 24 volt plug doesn't work for the 24 volt fan, so I used a 12 volt fan because I found a plug that was 12 volts. And I'm gonna post a video with all the links in the description and everything in between. But until then, I bid mon amis farewell and adieu.